Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Wednesday, November 18th edition of StudentLoanJustice.org. This is our live stream. If you're joining us on YouTube, you can join us live on our Facebook group. That's facebook.com/groups/SLJ group. So, welcome to all the new members, by the way. I'm thrilled to tell you that we are now up to 820 like 1 or 2 thousand signatures on our petition now. We are within shouting distance of 1 million signatures. And that will help us tremendously, folks. So if you forget everything I say tonight, remember that everything that you do to help that petition grow helps a lot. If getting these student loans gone, actually gone, not pretend gone, actually gone, is important to you, then you'll do everything you can to grow our petition. There is true strength in numbers, folks, and we are it. So we are Student Loan Justice. We are the oldest, largest, and pretty much only true grassroots citizens group actually fighting for student loan justice. As I just mentioned, we have a petition calling on the president to cancel student loans by executive order. This is by far and away the cheapest, easiest, and best targeted way to stimulate the economy. It is also the perfect opportunity to get rid of what has become a nationally threatening big government lending scam that the founding fathers themselves are turning over in their graves about. So I'm glad that you found us. Tell everyone you know about this group, certainly about our petition. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk specifically to conservatives, right? Okay, so our petition really started taking off when we started it in March. We were a lone voice in the wilderness calling for canceling student loans by executive order. Well, as of about 7 or 8 weeks ago, Chuck Schumer and Elizabeth Warren, Democrats in Congress, I don't want to say stole, but they appropriated our concept. All the other loan cancellation stuff we hear about from Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, and we supported both those people, by the way, but whatever. All the loan cancellation stuff we were hearing about up until we started our petition was through Congress, where Congress would have to raise $1 trillion and $2 trillion, take that money and use it to pay for loan cancellation. Well, that is just nonsense. The president can cancel all federally owned student loans, 85% of all student debt, by executive order without needing one penny of appropriation from Congress, without needing congressional approval, appropriation, without adding one dime to the national debt. The taxpayers paid for these loans many years ago. They shouldn't have to pay twice. It is a catastrophically failed lending system, and there is no better opportunity to take this lending system to the bath, drown it in the tub, and come up with a better way to fund higher education in this country. So, folks, tonight I want to talk to conservatives. As I said, the Democrats have sort of stolen our thunder on this, and predictably, in our very bifurcated media landscape, the Republican media machine has seized upon it and have taken the other side. They're like, no, that's not fair to people who paid on their student loans or who paid full book value for their, or, who wrote checks for their kids' educations. And no, it's not fair, it's not fair, it's not fair. We won't have it. Those Democrats, they're just tax and spend liberals and they want to fund Antifa and so on and so forth. This is coming from the conservative media, folks. And this is what I want to address tonight. Just today I saw some of the younger conservatives out there like Ben Shapiro and another guy, I can't even remember his name, Cabot Phillips, I believe his name was, saying, just parodying all the stuff that I just said. Now, for the truth. And if you're a conservative, you should be very concerned. But please, stick with me for the next 45 seconds and let me lay out the truth of this matter for you and for any conservatives out there. Quite frankly, I hope there's some conservatives, reporters or other media out there watching this because they need to know. So let's back up and look at the big picture. First of all, there's 55 million borrowers in the country who either have student loans or are co-signed on them. 55% of these 55 million people identify as being politically either Republicans, and that's like 44%, 43%, or independent, which is another 12%. So the majority of student loan borrowers identify as being either Republican or independent. They are not liberal. They lean to the right. Second of all, this lending system is a big government monstrosity. Who benefits from the student loan system? There are two entities, by and large. There are the colleges, for whom this lending system provides a very stable $100 billion a year in revenue to. And then there is the lending apparatus. The department, and President Obama, by the way, federalized this lending system in 2010. And since 2010, the federal student loan system has been profiting $50+ billion a year. Okay? Now, here's another little tidbit that you need to know. Of those 50, and it's probably closer to $100 billion a year in more recent years, in government profits on this lending system are being used to fund Obamacare. That's true. Ask Dick Morris. He will back me up on this. In fact, he wrote an article about this at The Hill. Google it. So, now, another thing to be aware of is that conservatives hate the colleges, right? Because the colleges are indoctrinating our youth. And by the way, we are a nonpartisan group. We don't have a dog in any fight but for student loan justice. So these are not my words. These are conservatives' viewpoints. Conservative viewpoint is that the colleges are indoctrinating our kids, and they're too expensive, and that is true. That anybody has to agree with. Whether they're indoctrinating our youth with socialist or communist values, I don't even... Whatever you think, I'm good with that. But conservatives think that. Conservatives also hate big government. Yes? Am I wrong? No, I'm right. So when conservatives like Ben Shapiro and the other guy, Colton Phillips or something, Cabot Phillips, and all the rank and file media conservatives are all piling on against student loan cancellation as we speak. What they are actually doing by wagging their fingers at us, the borrowers who got caught up in this big government college feeding lending scam / frenzy, by wagging their fingers at us, all that they are doing is defending and ultimately perpetuating the very same big government lending system, and they are helping the very colleges that they claim to despise. They are helping big government. So this is the most hypocritical, anti-conservative thing that they could be doing. And believe me, folks, we have been sharpening this sword to a razor's edge over the past 15 years. And frankly, I cannot wait to eviscerate people like Ben Shapiro and Cabot Phillips and all the other name brand conservatives who are jumping onto this bandwagon. The fact of the matter is that this is a catastrophically failed big government college feeding lending scam that the founding fathers themselves are rolling over in their graves about. John Adams said there's two ways to conquer and enslave a country. One is by the sword, the other is by debt. And that is precisely what we are seeing. So 55 million people in the country who vote most of whom lean either conservative or independent, are being affected by these loans. I don't know what the percentage of Antifa or whatever on these loans is, but it's probably down in the like 0.5% range. You know, the very vocal fringe is never a big number of people. But folks, we have to call out these fake conservatives for what they are. You know, a very conservative person, Grover Norquist. Google him, Norquist. He once famously said that government should be small enough so that if you had to, you could take it to the bath and drown it in the tub. Well, I am here to tell you folks, whether you consider yourself a liberal or a conservative or whatever, it is time to take this nationally threatening, unconstitutional, hyperinflationary, indefensible, big government federal student loan system, certainly, to the bath and drown it in the tub. Frankly, there is no better solution for the student loan problem at this moment. Yeah, we could return bankruptcy protections to the loans, and believe me, we fought very moderately for the first 15 years of our existence for exactly that. But at this point, at this juncture, folks, it's too late. The lending system has gone over the cliff. It is done. It has catastrophically failed. It's toast. The default rate for everybody walking around with student loans right now is going to be 70, 75, maybe even 80%. And that's pre-pandemic analysis. Pre-pandemic. So the subprime home mortgage default rate, that's another failed lending system. Default rate for subprime home mortgages was less than 20%, ladies and gentlemen. It was about 18%. So we are now far more than triple, by every reasonable metric or measure, far more than triple the default rate of the subprime home mortgage loans. So this is a catastrophically failed lending system, folks, and returning bankruptcy to these loans at this late date will only ensure that we throw 20, 30 more million people into bankruptcy for the crime of going to college. No. And by the way, that won't stimulate the economy very much. And oh, by the way, it will overwhelm every bankruptcy court in the nation. In any given year, around about 1 million people file for bankruptcy. So trying to shove 20, 25, 30 million, maybe more, through the bankruptcy courts is just ridiculous on its face. So it's really too late for bankruptcy. And make no mistake, there are two great bills in the House and Senate right now, S-1414, H.R. 2648. Those bills will return bankruptcy protections to all of the student loans that the president cannot cancel by executive order. And that absolutely needs to happen. But for the vast majority of these loans, they simply need to be canceled. And that is just a fact, Jack. You know, and if you're a conservative and you kind of still have some problems with this, put it this way. Of the 1.67, probably even more, trillion dollars in outstanding federal student loans, there is no way that the government is going to get back more than 15 or 20 cents on the dollar for those loans, no matter what they do. Student loans are evaporating into a mist of illegitimacy as we speak. So that's just a fact. Everything I've said before should lead you to agree with me on this point. National joke. Nobody's paying. Nobody was paying even before the pandemic. The lending system is finished. We've got to get rid of it. So how best to do that? Okay, return bankruptcy protections. Yeah, bankrupt 30 million of our citizens. Leave them pissed off, not particularly happy, not particularly in love with their country, certainly not very patriotic as a result of being forced into bankruptcy by their own government. Or call it good, reset the lending system, and by the way, put the colleges on a very significant diet going forward under whatever sort of future higher education financing model arises out of the ashes. Which is better? Obviously, canceling the loans and starting over again is obviously better. There is no better way to stimulate the economy right now. Like I said, we just threw $1 trillion nearly in PPP loans out of the country, don't need to be repaid, all add to the national debt. Canceling student loans by executive order adds not one penny to the national debt, needs not one dime of tax to be raised. Taxpayers already paid for these loans many years ago. They shouldn't have to be forced to pay twice. There is no better, cheaper, easier, more expedient, a more better targeted way to stimulate the economy right now than by canceling these loans. You know, the Republicans and the Democrats do a great disservice to this country by politicizing this issue. On the one hand, we're hearing murmurs from the Democrats about how they want to discriminate who gets loan forgiveness, who doesn't, based upon race and other things that are divisive. We don't need to discriminate, folks. This is a wholly and catastrophically failed lending system. Are maybe 15 or 20% of the people who are doing well, able to repay their loans, going to make out like bandits on this? Yes, they are. That's just unavoidable. They are. 80%, however, 44 million people, when you include both borrowers and cosigners, let's say 37 million people who were never going to be able to pay their loans, they're not going to be making out like bandits. They're going to be making it back to zero. So let me ask you this question. Did the 43,000 millionaires and billionaires who we just gave a pandemic stimulus of $1.6 million to, and they didn't even ask, did they make out like bandits from the stimulus? Yes, they did. Should we wag their fingers at them? Maybe we should. But we should certainly be wagging our fingers at them rather than at the 55 million people who have been caught up in this big government lending scam. So what about all the millionaires and billionaires who got a total of $5 trillion in tax cuts since George W. Bush over the past 13 years? What about them? Did they not make out like bandits? Yes, they did. So is it really that big of a deal to essentially give, I'm going to say maybe $100 billion or so to the very small percentage of student loan borrowers who were able to successfully repay their loans? It's not a very big deal, folks, particularly in the past 2 decades where not only have we shoveled tax gifts to the wealthiest among us, we've also thrown $7-8 trillion into Iraq or Afghanistan. So how did we pay for that? That all added to the national debt. What I'm talking about adds nothing to the national debt. So if you're a conservative and you're buying into all that nonsense propaganda that is being floated by the establishment corporate media as we speak, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. And if you happen to be Ben Shapiro or the other guy, I can never remember his name, Cabot Phillips, or any of the name brand conservatives that are piling on this disgusting, obscene, embarrassing bandwagon that actually is propping up the worst big government lending monstrosity and feeding these socialist indoctrinating colleges that the nation has ever seen before, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. You ought to turn in your conservative card because you've been played for a fool by the very same big government, by the very same colleges that you claim to despise. You should be embarrassed. You should be ashamed of yourself. You should apologize. And you should turn in your conservative card because you have been played for a fool, my friend. You're a chump. You're a useful idiot. And when and if this country actually does, I don't know if it will or not, but whatever. If your worst fears come true, and if this country actually does turn communist or socialist, we'll have useful idiots. Idiots claiming to be conservatives exactly like you. No. We will have useful idiots claiming to be conservatives, which is you to thank. In fact, I will put you up for some communist medal when Stalin's people roll into the country and take it over. You idiot. You sided with big government and the colleges over your own citizens. There is nothing conservative about that, and you ought to be ashamed of yourself. So, all right, folks, I think that's it for me tonight. Spread this live stream to every conservative corner on the internet that you can possibly find. Tell the media about us. I am very willing to go toe-to-toe with Rush Limbaugh or this kid Shapiro or his little kid punk friend Cabot Phillips and any other name brand conservatives wishing to meaningfully engage on this very important question. Thank you and good night.